Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ESI for All, the Esports Insider podcast, where we aim to shed a light on the diverse people and organizations that make up the esports community. I'm joined today by Annabel Ashalley-Anthony, the founder of Melanin Gamers. How are you doing this sunny afternoon, Annabel?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thank you. Definitely enjoying having some sunnier days and some longer evenings with the sunshine.
That's true.
So, first off, tell us about Melanin Gamers.
Sure. So Melanin Gamers is a gaming community that promotes inclusion and diversity in the video games industry. We do panel talks, tournaments, networking events, and we showcase different people of color in the industry as well.
Amazing. So I'm going to move on to just talk to you a little bit more about your personal experiences and also, what it's like being a person of color in the esports industry, in the gaming industry. What's your personal history with esports?
I guess it's with gaming in general because um, what we do, we work with a lot of schools, colleges, and universities, and trying to get people into the industry, skilled up, understand what it is like to work in the industry as well. Because there's still a lot of, I don't want to say ignorance, but like a misunderstanding about working in gaming and also a stigma attached to that and it not being, I don't know, a viable career path as well.
Yeah, so what challenges have you personally experienced as a person of color in the gaming industry?
I guess in terms of the toxicity online, I've experienced a lot of that. Personally, when I'm like gaming, when I'm streaming, it can be quite difficult. Um, Certain opportunities I feel like are given to certain creators of a certain demographic, and there's a lot of gatekeeping involved in the industry when it comes to costs, which is one thing that I noticed last year. Location, a lot of things are in London, that kind of thing. A lot of things are very expensive to get to. You don't even know some of these things exist. So that's what I mentioned about education. So with me personally, it was not knowing. Like I'm a writer. That's my trade. That's kind of what I do. I never knew that the a games, and I love gaming. I didn't know there was such a thing as a games writer until like I want to say like 5 years ago. And I was like, what? That would have been like a perfect career for me. So that's what I'm saying about the education side of things, of like not knowing certain things because we're not in spaces where other people know as well. So it's not like our teachers' fault because they don't know either. Um, and so that's why I think it's something that's a bit of gatekeeping in the industry as well, especially when it comes to people of color. We don't get access to some of these opportunities. We don't know about them, and then also the skill the skill gap. We know about this thing now. We need the skills to get it. So it's just like that's why it's so important the work we're doing with the youth because we they need to know and then get the skills before like they can even join this industry.
Yeah, it's esports and gaming is one of those industries where it's kind of like it's not what you know, it's who you know, and if those people aren't sharing what they know with
Mm-hmm.
people of color, then it's there's no invitation to join, you know what I mean? And it's
That's
it,
very
it can
true.
definitely be yeah, like you said, gatekeeping for sure, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what steps do you think the industry can take to address this? I know that you said about like education, but do you think there's sort of like a wider task at hand in order to make sure that we're sharing what we have in this community with everyone?
Yeah, definitely sharing of skills, networking schemes that they can put on, that are specifically targeted for like women, for people who, for people of color, like so that to get them into the industry, internships, workshops, that kind of thing, that are not charged or maybe also come with some funding because sometimes you want to go for something, but because of like your socioeconomic circumstances, you can't go for it. You can't work for free, even though maybe you need to do an internship that's not paid, that sort of stuff. So they need to talk about leveling the playing field, you know. some people are coming from they're so far back they don't even have the means to do some of these things. So it's not just about putting on these workshops, it's also about making sure that these spaces are safe, for people of color to come into these workspaces. I will there's an analogy that Cephas William used in one of his talks, and he said if someone came to your house and they were in a wheelchair, you would move things out the way for them, because obviously they're in a wheelchair, so you'd move things out the way for them. You wouldn't expect them to be able to navigate your house like someone who could, an able-bodied person could walk. So that's the same thing. It's not just, oh, come into these fields, but are these fields, are things maybe need to be moved around so that they also feel comfortable in these fields, that sort of thing. So we're also talking about retention. So there's a lot of things that the industry itself could do. There's so many things that they could do, on a larger scale too. It's like they're doing some of these things, but they are, I guess, maybe Black History Month, that kind of stuff, or Women's History Month, and it's just like, are we talking about 1 month in the whole year that's you women exist outside of, the month of March, Black people that exist outside of the month of October? So they could be doing so much more, especially with schools, and also especially with people who also want to get back in, who maybe are transferring from one industry to another. So they maybe are they're mid level in the industry that they're currently in. But how do they will definitely have transferable skills, but how do they do that? And that's a problem that we're having with quite a lot of our community members, who are in a certain field right now but would love to transfer into gaming, and they don't know how to do that. So there's loads of different things that the industry itself could do, organizations could do, to level the playing field.
Yeah, I've talked in a previous podcast with Robin from Gaming Magazine about companies that just do Pride Month and then
Mm.
throughout the rest of the year do absolutely nothing else. So it's definitely like the token show your
Mhm.
support for,
Mhm.
like you said, that month and then nothing else. And you also made a really good point about making those spaces safe and welcoming. And instead of just being like, why don't we have more people of color in our space when we want them to be here, but then when you actually take a look at what you've got going on, that there isn't the necessary like things in place to make sure that you're welcoming them into an environment that they are then going to want to stay in. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, and also like they're talking about the barriers to entry. So what do you think are the biggest barriers to entry for esports and gaming for people of color?
I think it's not understanding how maybe to apply and what way to apply. Sometimes it's also who to talk to. Some organizations, I was talking to someone yesterday, they do blind interview processes. That those also have their problems. But it's like how is the practice of even recruiting? Where are you recruiting, and what spaces are you recruiting? Are you recruiting on certain spaces that um, probably don't have a very diverse demographic? Like there are so many different things. Like make sure that you're reaching out to different organizations. Like there's Black girls who code. They women in tech, Black women in tech. Like are you promoting whatever the position in diverse spaces? Are you making sure you're doing that? Are you making sure that your your company is on a level which they have put in certain practices? Maybe they do need a D&I person in there. Like what are the steps you're taking to making sure that you're not only hiring in a way that's authentic and will attract diverse talent, but also that when they come into work, you have retention to keep them, and that you're listening to them as well. So there's different things that like dynamics as well. The language choice that you're using, like do they fit in with the culture at work? What does that mean? There's so many different things that they can do to make sure that even the application process, the words on the applications are appealing to a wider range of people. So I think there is a lot of things that they can do, and they're sort of already out there. It's not like, oh, how do we come up with this new solution? The solution exists. It's just not been implemented.
Yeah, and I always say that it's one of those things as well when people ask me the question, how can I get more diverse people to apply for the jobs that we're putting up? And I think one of the main things is take a look at your current staff. Um,
Mm.
and if you're looking for people to join your company and they look at your current staff and they don't see anybody like them. They don't see anybody that shares spaces with them. They don't see anybody they think that could relate to them, especially in a professional standpoint. Then they're not necessarily going to work for your company. They're not going to want to be around people that have no idea what it is to work as a person like that. You know what I mean? Like you look
Hmm.
at a company and it's all women. I think I don't necessarily want to work there, or you feel uncomfortable. So it's also about taking a look at what you've currently got going on internally before you even think about expanding and before you even ask yourself the question, why aren't people of color applying for my open positions? And like you said, a lot of the times they're just popping it on Indeed or popping it on LinkedIn and thinking job's done, that's it. But there are
Hmm.
so many places, and they're not hard to find. So
At
many
all.
places that you can be advertising your job roles, and communities that you could be discussing with Discord communities, Discord servers, and things like this. And also another one is ask somebody who you respect or who you think is doing it well, or you look at their company workup and you think that is an excellent, diverse, inclusive, and fun workplace to and I will ask them what they're doing and
Or
how you
hire a
can.
DNI
Oh yeah,
person. Like,
exactly.
don't just go to like the one black employee you have and say, "Oh, how do because are they being paid for like and what do they maybe know about DNI themselves?" So sometimes
Exactly.
that kind of happens where they will just be like, "Oh, so how do we get more black?" And you're just like, "Wait, what? What are you asking me exactly?" You know. So making sure that you're doing it right, and that maybe if you have to hire the talent for it, you do it correctly as opposed to just going to the first black employee you see, because
Yeah,
that just won't,
it
won't run.
is. It is not the job of every person of color to educate you on issues surrounding people
Exactly.
of color. And that's the same for like all marginalized people. I've said this over and over and over again. It is not their job to educate you, it is your job
Hmm.
to educate yourself. And also, it is your job to hire people that can educate you. So bringing in outside training, like you said, hiring a D&I employee. So I'm an EDI executive, so that's part of my role as well.
Hmm.
So it's literally, if you don't know, pay somebody who does know, and that's important. You should pay them because this is advice, this is expertise, this isn't just a friendly conversation. Like if you want to do it right, you should pay somebody who knows what they're doing and who knows how to reach out and who knows how to improve what you've currently got going on.
Exactly.
How do you think we can encourage more diversity and representation in the gaming industry, both in terms of like the workforce, but also like professional players and things like that?
In terms of professional players, I think the same thing can be implemented in terms of um, schemes and things like that, because that's a problem that we're actually having now. With some of the members saying, "How do I get into esports? It's like I'm doing everything correctly, but I don't know who do I ask, who do I do this." And I think that they should do schemes that are specifically targeted to help people of color getting into esports. Helping them with funding, because that's a huge thing when it comes to trying to dedicate a lot of your time. Because it's like any sports, you have to have you train. Like for example, my brother, he puts time into aim training. He puts time into scrims. He puts time into all of these things that they're putting a lot of time into, and it's also about funding. A lot of I'm not saying all people of color, but people from certain demographics come from lower economic standpoints, so it's harder for them to put in the time and having it paid off as fast as well. You know, based on their white counterparts. So their time that they're putting in is not showing the level of return that their white counterparts are getting. They're getting signed, they're getting this, they're getting that. So I think that they need to be doing sort of running schemes like this. This is specifically target. Like I see some of these scrims that are like women or people who identify as them. I'm just like, those are really great because also those spaces are protected as well, and it's easier to be able to train when you know that the space you're in is you can be yourself, you can relax and that sort of thing. And I think that they need to be doing more things like that to encourage people because it's not just about training. Then you have to worry about like my other brother. I have two brothers. He was trying to get to Grandmaster in Overwatch, but his team were being his own team, mind you, not the enemy team, his own team were being racist towards him. So not
God.
only is he under pressure because of the game itself and grinding out the game and all that sort of stuff. But it's now you have to deal with these added things. So I think that there needs to be schemes. I don't know if esports organizations need to do this or the games themselves need to do this, but I think a lot of esports organizations, I think they should take the initiative and try and roll out some of these schemes for people who they feel like need it, who also have the talent to, again, when we're talking about equity, we're talking about leveling the playing field so that it's actually level. Because I was at the ALGS earlier this year and there wasn't a single woman there. And I'm like, I know women who are at that level, who have that skill level. But it's like finding out why exactly they're not there. They good? Of course they are. They have the skill, they have the talent. Why aren't they in these spaces? And actually asking yourself what you can do to make it easier for them to be in it. There wasn't a single black person there either. Why aren't they there? They do have the skill level. Um, and then trying to implement things that will bring them into this, because it's nicer to see when you actually see representation, when it's authentic as well, as opposed to just having a token.
Yeah, I think something really important that you said there that not a lot of people know about is the difference between equality and equity.
Mm-hmm.
And equality is obviously providing everybody with the same resources, but like you said, that's not always the way it works. Sometimes people need more resources in order to even be on the same level as the people that have what they've got at the moment. So equity is about making sure that everybody has what they need
Mm-hmm.
individually to reach the same point as everybody else. And I think one of the main issues with esports in particular is that you're expected to work for free when you start working in esports, and having the ability to work for free often comes with having white privilege. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where when you come from a socioeconomic background where you don't have, for example, like parents that have loads of money that will support you working for free, and it's one of those things where you find, like you said, not all people of color, but a lot of people of color just don't have the resources or the money or the funds available in order to do things for free, because who can afford to do things for free anymore? And
Exactly.
it's just one of those things where esports is very, you need to work for free and you need to grind and you need to work outside of your allotted hours, and if you're really passionate about it you'll do it, but it's not about passion, it's about access to resources.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. That is about the access. It's really, really about the access to some of these things. And it's just not there. There's also them not even knowing that, oh, I didn't realize that there was this thing on or that thing on. And again, it's like, where are you advertising some of these scrims? Where are you advertising some of these events? Like, what spaces are you using to advertise these events in? And who gets to see it often? You know, that's also another thing that has to be addressed as well.
Yeah, like a lot of people that work in esports marketing that I've come across haven't done any sort of training in inclusive marketing. And that's the thing, like when you learn marketing, you're learning about social media, you're learning about like PPC ads and things like that, but you're not learning about how to be inclusive with where you're putting, like you said, where you're putting these ads, like where you're trying to find people to come to your events or join your scrims or join your teams or watch it online and things like that. And if you're not putting those marketing materials in front of the eyes of diverse people, you're not going to get diverse people coming to them.
Exactly. And then you're gonna get like toxic players saying, well, maybe they just aren't as good, maybe they aren't interested. And then that's like a whole other conversation within itself.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's the same, it's a similar conversation that always happens to, oh, women are just terrible at esports. It's like, no, they just don't want to play games with you because you make
Mm,
them feel uncomfortable.
exactly.
So how can allies and non-POC individuals help create a more inclusive and equitable gaming community?
I think the first and foremost is actually listening and believing. That's one of the things that I find the most difficult. When you say something and you've called it out, are you sure is that's what you saw? Are you sure that's what they meant? Are you? And then it's just like it's the deflation you feel when that's someone's first thing that they say
It's
is
like,
like,
oh, I'm
okay,
sure he didn't mean it that way. And it's like,
exactly.
you weren't
And
there.
and sometimes there is room for that, but it's in the first instance, ask, listen. Listening is first. Listen to everything and then ask in a respectful way. Okay, so Do you think they meant it? Or do you think that is? I think you can still say maybe they didn't mean it that way, but if you're not listening, if your first knee jerk reaction is no, 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 they didn't mean it that way, you haven't even listened. Listening is
Mm.
the first thing you need to be doing when it comes to these things because you cannot understand. And when someone's trying to explain it to you, try to feel what they're feeling, you know? And that is the first thing that you need to do is to listen and then to ask afterwards and then to help in a way that's not like a white savior coming and swooping in, but like assisting. And you can do that in different ways and based on a relationship you have with somebody. For example, I go to a lot of these events mostly when I first started MG because I'm quite introvert. I'm quite an introvert, and it was really difficult for me to like network and stuff like that. I went with my brother, my Alan, the Overwatch player, and sometimes I would be talking in a room, and then they would. I'd get people talking over me. A lot of guys, I'm afraid that was my personal experience. A lot of guys would talk over me when I was saying something, and then they would address it to my brother, and then he would say, "I think my sister was saying something. Anna, you were saying," and that for me was very helpful in our dynamic, so that I could take over. You know, not him just um, reiterating what I said or saying what I was said, but let me say it in my own words again. Redirect the conversation, the attention back to me again, and in that dynamic, that I found very helpful from him. You know, some people maybe they would like that the person they're with to explain it instead, or maybe they wanted to speak up again. But at that time, I wasn't able to always speak up, and I like that he was there to lean on to be able to bring it back again to me if I had such situations like that happen. So in the dynamic of our relationship, that worked for me. So also find out the dynamic that works for you, because that is a thing where it's not one size fits all with allyship, where it's just like, oh, this is what you do. I'll come in and I'll make sure that they hear you. That doesn't work for everybody. It worked for me then. Now, of course, I can just be like, actually, I was to say this is what I was saying. Actually, I'm like,
Excuse
I'm
me.
fine.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like, hello. I think I was saying this. Now I can do that because I'm more comfortable, in my voice. But then I couldn't. So it's also learning the shifts as well, where it's just like, no, I think she's got this. I'm gonna wait as well. You know, it's not an difficult thing to be an ally to somebody at all. It really isn't. It's about listening and understanding them, and then helping them in any way that you see fit, and
Mhm.
saying that, do you need my help in this situation? You know, sometimes they don't, and sometimes they do. So don't think that, oh well, I don't want to be. I will never understand. I won't. Try to understand. Try to do things to understand. Educate yourself as well. There are people who don't mind educating you. You know, some of my friends sometimes come to me and say, "Oh, this, and that." Other times, Google is still free. Last I checked, you know, there are loads of books out there. There are so many books out there. Podcasts. There are just so many things that you can go to educate yourself. You
Mhm.
know, and then maybe there are friends that you could be like, oh, I know this friend will be able to explain it to me. Then go to them with that. Not, I've read this thing online. What do you like? Don't do that. That you will not do. So it's also about power dynamics and the friendships that you have. Listen and learn as well, because even I'm still listening and learning about, because when you work, there's intersectionalities when it comes to this sort of stuff. And don't think that, oh, I'm a person of color, I get everything that, no, I don't understand everything that other people who go through as well. You know, I'm a disabled. I have sickle cell anemia. I count myself as having a chronic condition. I don't say that now I understand all disabilities, and I completely understand how you feel. I also have a disability too, so I know, no, I don't. I know what it feels like to have a chronic condition. I know what it feels like to have sickle cell. That doesn't mean I know what it feels like everyone who has it too. So there's also that caveat that I will add, where it's just like, just because maybe you are a person doesn't mean you understand what everybody else is going through, because everyone's stories is different, and black people are not a monolith, you know.
Yeah.
So it's as and when you take these things as well.
Yeah, then and that's the same goes for me. I'm also a disabled person, but don't even pretend to know what it's like to be a quadriplegic or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different facets to each community you're a part of, and to pretend like you know everything about what everybody's feeling and experiencing is just not true.
Exactly.
In order to be a true ally, like you said, teach yourself.
Mm.
It's a constant thing. It's not just a one day you can say, "Oh, I'm an ally now. this is how we're going to be doing this. It's you have to constantly learn more, read more, watch more. There's panels, there's talks, there's
Yeah,
books, there's podcasts, there's, like you said, friends, if that's the kind of relationship that they're comfortable having in that sense. It's just, you can't just slap an ally badge on and be like, this is it, I'm sorted now. It's a
exactly.
constant thing that you have to work on. So, have you seen any positive examples of racial inclusion and diversity in esports and gaming? And how do you think we can build on these examples to create lasting change?
In terms of esports, I haven't seen it yet. I suppose here in London, I'm not seeing enough of it for it to be something. I'm only seeing maybe a one-off. And even then, I'm just like, are they on the main team, or are they just signed as a content creator? Because I also feel like that's something a lot of teams do, where they will sign people who they actually wants to go pro, but oh, you can be a content creator for them. And I don't think it's a right thing to just so that their roster looks diverse, but actually the pro players are still white males. And I'm seeing that quite a bit. And I feel like it's a step backwards because they can still kind of tick the diversity check because their content creators are people of color. They've got more women on their content creator sides, but have they got more women as pros? Um, so it's just like, how is diversity being sort of divvied up kind of thing? I think, I mean, I've said what they could do in terms of like schemes and stuff, and taking a chance and taking risk and funding, that sort of stuff. That's a really big thing in this space. Games that are doing it correctly in terms of diversity, there's quite a few games now. Not really esports, more indie games that I feel like they're doing diversity absolutely chef's kiss. And I think that's because more indie games I found, the devs are from diverse backgrounds. So you'll see that they'll create diverse games. And that's sort of like a natural thing that I see because you have a diverse team, you create a diverse game. It kind of follows. You don't have a
Yes.
diverse team, you will not really. I'm not saying non-diverse teams can't create, but from what I've seen, from what I've experienced, my own personal experiences, it kind of follows that diverse teams create diverse games,
Yeah.
and better games and more in-depth games because
Hmm.
everyone's bringing things from like their own walks of life. But if you have the same kind of person recruited from the same area, it will just be like an echo chamber. Yeah, 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 yeah. That sounds about right. No one's questioning anything. Everyone has the exact same idea. Everyone's co-signing their idea, and only people who look like them too. So I definitely think maybe it's worth a look at the indie space as well. But for the pros, I really do think that they need to be doing more, these organizations, in terms of their hiring processes, in terms of the scrims they're putting on, where they're advertising it. As you said, like the marketing for that, even the word choice that you're using. Like that, maybe all of these people just need to be hiring D&I consultants so
Yeah.
that they know
Yeah.
that. Like, I just think that should be a standard across the board. Um,
100%.
because I don't know how they can learn if they're not taught by somebody who's already in the know.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I really hope that's the future going forward, that they just hire D&I consultants and then they're just like, look, this is where you're going wrong. And that's fine. No one's expecting you to get it correct, but it's when you stay doing the same stuff over and over again, then it seems intentional.
Yeah. And I think you made a couple of excellent points there that I'm always reiterating in my podcast and also on panels and stuff. And it's that diverse people make diverse games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also where we see marginalized people actually spending more money on PCs and peripherals than we do the rest of the people, is because that's where the indie games are. And that's
Yeah.
where people are seeing games that reflect what they want to see, and people like them. And definitely, you also mentioned about ticking that diversity box, and often that is like a requirement in order to say that you're a diverse company. Do you think that like governmental bodies should get more involved in gaming and diversity, and making it sort of compulsory for having diverse people on your staff, or do you think that will cause more issues than
And that
problems
might cause more
solved?
issues. That might cause more issues because then you might be hired out of tokenism,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just like, oh, okay, we've gotten the one black face and we've gotten the one woman in, and then it's just like then your skill will always be called into question when probably you're most likely good enough or maybe better than the people who are there, but forever it will just be like, well, you have to be here because the government is forcing us to make you here, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think these organizations themselves should be able to realize that they should be doing more themselves as opposed to be having to be strong armed, you know, by a government saying that, oh, make sure you're diverse. Like, isn't that something you should be doing anyway?
yeah, definitely. Um, and in your opinion, what impact do you think lack of representation in these companies and in these teams and on-air talent, and just general people of color in mainstream gaming culture, what effect do you think that has on young people of color?
I think it has a trickle down effect of you. Um, it's you can't be what you can't see. You don't ever see anybody that looks like you in these spaces. You It's hard to relate. I'm not saying it's possible to relate because some people can still relate, but it's harder to relate. Like, could I make it if nobody who looks like me has ever made it before? Are these spaces for me? What will these spaces be like when I get in there if nobody looks like me? So there's that part. Some people are still breaking barriers and go into these spaces even though they know no one looks like them, but it makes it by far more difficult. That's why we're so on showcasing people of color, because like, look, all these people who look like you, they're doing it. You can do it too. And sometimes it's literally that simple. This person looks like me, they've done it, I can do it too. Like, that is how simple sometimes the human brain works. There's nobody there that looks like me. Can I even do it? Will I even relate to it? And as a young person, you will be asking yourselves those things. You're already in that vulnerable space of finding your identity and all that sort of stuff, without having this added pressure of, do I have to be the first one to break down this door? That is something that a lot of black people don't actually like. I was the first. What? I was the first person in the history of the world? That is insane to me, though. Sometimes those stats that I hear, you're proud of them for doing it, but it's just like, did it really take us this long?
Yeah,
You
even
know?
now with like the Oscars, I think I saw a tweet last week which was like one of the actresses was the second person of color to ever win that award, and I was like,
Yeah. Michelle,
that's
yeah, I think she was also the first ever Asian woman, Malaysian woman
it,
to ever win. Ever
which is
in the history of the
ridiculous.
Oscars.
It's so ridiculous that these
Yes.
these barriers are still haven't been, like you said, broken down or things like that.
It's
Like,
insane.
and while it is good that it's happening, it's happening far too late. Like these things should
Yeah,
have,
it's
yeah,
alarming.
it is alarming, definitely. Um, how do you see the intersection of race and gender playing out in the gaming industry?
Well, that's also another thing. I manage the MG Twitch stream, so we have streamers on our channel, and most the when I see the analytics of the trolls and the comments and the hate, the black women get it the worst. So it's not just you're a woman, you're also black as well, and so you're getting the hatred based on your gender and based on your race. And then sometimes you throw in, because some of our members are part of the LGBTQ, so it's just like they're getting it like from every single angle, and it's like,
Yeah,
how do you exist in this world where like it seems like everything's geared to hate you?
yeah,
And so there is that intersectionality of it makes it even more difficult. It adds more layers of stuff that it's harder for you to exist in certain spaces. And sometimes you don't want to because it's so difficult that actually, you know what, I'd rather stop doing this. I'd rather stop playing this game. I'd rather stop this. And that's what I'm talking about with the retention. Why do I
yeah,
have to try so hard when this industry looks like it's designed against me? I don't think
yeah.
I want to be here anymore.
Yeah, that's yeah. I can, yeah. Sorry, I don't even have the words to imagine having so many different people just not wanting you to be here, and it's
Yeah.
just, yeah. Um, how do you think recent movements for racial justice and social change, such as Black Lives Matter, impacted the gaming industry and community?
I think it made a lot of people sit up and realize exactly the struggle that we were facing. There was a lot of performative activism from some of these bigger corporations when that first happened, and or promises that were made but have not been kept. With others, though, other companies, those promises sustained, and they did like follow up their words, then they had actions, and they were like, okay, these are the actions we've taken. How can we now do even more? And that was amazing to see, because some of them were actually genuine, and but it was majority weren't. But the ones who were, it was like it's bittersweet because why did it have to take something like this
Yeah.
uh, for you guys to see that what we've been screaming at to the heavens has been a real thing. But at the same time, it's like you're finally taking notice. But these like there's baby steps happening, and I think we're kind of too comfortable with baby steps. We need some like full grown adult jogging now or some running. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, baby steps, baby steps. No, no, it's okay to say baby steps when you're coming from a place of privilege and your life is fine. But when you're coming from a place of you're struggling every day, baby steps is just not good enough anymore.
It's not enough.
You know.
Yeah. Hmm. And how do you think the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the gaming industry, particularly in terms of racial disparities and inequalities?
I think in terms of COVID, a lot of people were at home and were able to maybe see some of these communities a bit more. I think it goes in tandem with the whole what happened with George Floyd and like the Black Lives Matter movement, because that was all throughout COVID. And I think because the world stood still, there was sort of a magnifying glass on certain things, and maybe issues that would have got ignored largely and have were amplified and were seen for the first time ever. So that's what I'm saying. Like some companies did actually make sustained choices that they made then that they are still continuing to make now, which is really good.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Um, so what advice would you give to young people of color who are interested in pursuing careers in esports or gaming?
I think that they should educate themselves, that they should definitely go for it because we need more people like them in the industry right now, especially as a young person. They shouldn't get discouraged. There's something that my brother always says: learn to rest, not to quit. It can get exhausting. It's like, oh, the race card, but it's like the only card you've been dealt, and it's just like you want to be a person as opposed to a black this and a black that, and like you're a whole person that exists. I'm a whole person that exists. I like baking, I like rollerblading, I like writing, I like gaming. Like, I'm black, I'm this, I'm that. Like, it's you want to be more than just your race. Your race is part of you and it makes up a beautiful part of you, but you want to be more than that. And I think that's what these companies also need to realize, that oh, we have to get these black gamers into, like, you just want to be a gamer. That's actually what we just wanted to do in the first place. We just wanted to game. But we had to start Melanin Gamers because we couldn't just exist in a space freely, And I think that can discourage people, but they shouldn't be discouraged because change is happening, and them being in a space is part of that change. Then succeeding is part of that change, and they don't realize like the impact that has on them and their peers as well. I love it when I'm seeing different people. I'm like, oh, okay, there's more of us in this space now. We're getting comfortable here. The space is getting more diverse, and that's like every single person has accounted for that. So don't give up. Learn to rest, not to quit, because sometimes it is difficult and draining on your mental health. But that's what rest is for. But keep going. That's what I would say.
That's great advice. That's really good. So I'm going to move on to some final segments, which I do in every episode,
Sure.
which is two truths and a lie. So I'm going to read
Oh,
you three facts about race and gaming and esports, and I want you to tell me which one of them is the lie. Okay,
okay.
you ready?
Yep.
Number one, according to a survey by Women in Games, only 5% of board members in the gaming industry are from Black, Asian, or minority ethnic backgrounds. Number two, according to a report by the Anti-Defamation League, 71% of Black players reported that they have been targeted with racial slurs while playing online. And number three, according to a survey by Nielsen, Black gamers spend an average of 6 hours per week playing video games compared to 5 hours per week for the overall population.
I think is the second one a lie?
The second one is true.
Oh,
Uh,
is it?
yeah, the first one is a lie. It's actually only 3% of board
Oh,
members in the
wow.
gaming industry.
I thought five was too low. I thought surely it has to be 10 or something. Three. Oh
Yeah,
my god.
even worse than five. Yeah. So apparently, this is a survey completed by Women in Games. Only 3% of board members in the gaming industry are from Black, Asian, or minority ethnic backgrounds.
That is awful. That
It
is
is.
actually awful.
The statistics are probably slightly different when you look at like esports as a whole, because we do
Mm,
have quite a lot of Asian business owners within esports, obviously because of the popularity of esports in like South Korea and things like that. But even that is bad. And then I have
seriously.
another segment that I always have at the end, which is if you could take three things with you to a deserted island, what three things would you take?
Okay, three things I would take on a desert island. Way to purify water. Um,
We've had
I'm
people
just
take
thinking about
Nintendo Switches, like it's it, it,
how to
it
how
you
to
don't
charge
need these
something like
items.
that.
I think it's safe to say like whatever you take will work while it's there.
Oh, okay, that's all right then.
It's a very fancy deserted island.
Desert island
Yeah.
sounds like it is. Um, then yeah, I'm taking my Nintendo Switch, isn't it? That's with hopefully a solar powered charger.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
um, and the last thing I would take is probably a first aid kit
Yeah, that's
too.
also yeah, smart.
Yeah.
Yep. I just wanted to say a massive thank you for coming on ESI for All. It has been incredible speaking to you, and even eye-opening for me as well. So I hope this helps some of the listeners educate themselves a little more on issues surrounding race in gaming and esports.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's great. Anything coming up with Melanin Gamers at the moment?
We'll be at Insomnia this Saturday, which is going to be lots of fun. I think also Comic Con is coming up too, but mostly we're just doing, working schools and stuff like that, and some Ghana events as well, because we are doing events in Ghana, which is in West Africa.
That's amazing. And where can people find you?
Oh, you guys can find us everywhere, basically on every social media platform. It's insane. So we're at Melanin Gamers everywhere: Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, the whole shebang.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming on, Annabelle.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.